Just a couple quick notes. Today was a ramp-up practice, coming off a day off. We have 50 active members of the military at practice today, and it was kind of nice to see them kind of have access that they did, and we appreciate them being here. I want to talk real quick about the quarterback position. You guys have been real patient. I understand, and respect that process for you, and for us, we've had a process. So, look, Bo Nix is going to be our starting quarterback. I felt like, and I said this to you guys 2 weeks ago, that room has been outstanding. Stidham, certainly with his experience, and then, being able to work with Zach Wilson, all three of those guys. We've got some tough decisions as we get into the roster. I don't want to get into all the other roster battles. That's not for today. But Bo will start, and we've kind of gone through our process. And in the very beginning of it all, just speaking with George and Greg and understanding that, oftentimes these things take care of themselves, but we're not in a hurry to arrive at those type of decisions. We want to see it, and I think it's important relative to the team that we handle it that way. And so, he's been outstanding. Obviously, there's a ton of room for growth. There's a lot of things that he needs to work on. I've already spoken with both, all three of those guys. Stiddy, will be a great resource for him, as well as Zach. And, we feel like that off season, at such an important position, we made some really good decisions, and we're going to have a chance to see them unfold as the season goes on. So with that, I'll take questions.
In what ways did both separate?
Well, I think, look, the larger body of work, there's certain things right now with Stiddy's experience that you see. I would say, a lot of the off-schedule movement throws, and I think he's been consistent, and it's not really a reflection on Jared or even Zach. It's some of the things that he's been able to do pretty quickly. His arm strength down the field, all the things when we evaluated him, you kind of trust your instincts. And I had received a text the other day from someone, a reporter that just said, it's the perfect scheme fit. And I responded, I said, I get that, but, a good quarterback's the perfect scheme fit anywhere. So there's certain narratives that people will hold on to relative to what they saw pre-draft. And there's two elements to our business. There's the entertainment element, and then there's the football element. And so respectfully, there's a lot of draft information that's more entertainment than football. And so, we're still in the beginning of this process, the development not only of him but the other two guys, as they can help our team, and so is the overall body of work.
So at what point did you realize, wow, he's really picking this up quick, and I think he can?
Well, I think you get early impressions in the spring, and then they're confirmed, with the pads on, and there's days you put the film on. We've got a lot of things to clean up. There's still things from that game, and so I think that, a lot of times, even in a preseason game where you think it went really well, you can put the tape on, point to the penalties, point to a handful of the things maybe directly that he has to improve on. But I think, the first impression in the spring was real positive.
So much of the position, there's always a lot of pressure placed on quarterbacks. You've said how a strong defense and a good run game can help take that pressure off. Do you feel confident in the things that you've seen from those sides that maybe give you?
Yeah, and look, that's the case. That's not just for a rookie. That's for Peyton Manning, Tom Brady, and, any of our great quarterbacks. They themselves would say, man, if we're struggling on defense and we're having trouble running the ball, it becomes harder to play that position the way you want to play it. So that's what we're in the midst of doing right now. We're still trying to get the consistency we want in the run game, and we've got another weekend relative to a preseason game and practices to work on that. The same way defensively. I think we've played the run pretty well, but it's like work in progress.
Sean, how do you use your quarterbacks on Sunday, and are you?
We're going to talk about Sunday, and I'm not leaning towards anything else. There's no other announcement today. I understand it. Go ahead.
I was just going to say 2 or 3 on the 53, man. Are you leaning?
We'll see. There's a handful of we'll sees coming next. I can sense it.
Some of the best, Tim, Court have spoken really.
Pardon?
Tim, Patrick, Cortland Sutton, some of these guys have talked really highly about Bo.
Yeah.
How encouraging is it, and how important was it that he's won some of those vets?
I think that's part of this process that we're talking about. In other words, everything in this league is earned, and the minute there's someone that has something that's not earned, that can affect and impact your locker room. It really can. And so I've told the story with you guys about other positions, guys that were drafted that were released, and free agents that made it. You know, these guys see it. And there's now we're rooting for all of them. We really are. Why wouldn't we? You know, we want to see all these young players have success. And yet there's still that element of show and earn and demonstrate. And so you guys obviously have spent a lot of time not just talking directly with the quarterbacks, but and there's a confidence level.
Sean, how did you, when did you tell the quarterbacks? And
Right out here on the practice field, before practice, I just grabbed each one of them, and, you know, I didn't want to read about this in the national media before I spoke to you guys. You know.
Sean, relative to where Bo is at this point,
Yep.
has he even exceeded your expectations in a way?
I don't think so. I don't think so. We went through that process, and we've talked about it. We went through that process with all of these guys, and we had a strong conviction, and then it's tuning out the white noise, you know, relative to what you're seeing. 2017, we spent hours on these players, and, you know, we had a certain grade on Kamara. I felt it wasn't high enough, and I remember just standing up on a chair in the draft room saying, we got this guy graded. And so there's kind of this NFL train during the draft that takes place, and you don't know really who's driving it, and you have to pay attention to it, but you don't ever want to get on it. And so all of those guys in the process did well. I mean, whether it was Drake or JJ or Penix, I mean, we spent a lot of time with all of them, and we just had a conviction, you know, after his pro day was on a Friday, and then he had a Saturday workout with us, meetings, and we just kept looking at the tape and doing our homework on it. And I think that sometimes is one of the challenges during the draft is it's harder today to tune out for the scouts and the coaches. You know, back in the 70s, you didn't, or the 80s, you didn't, but now there's so much information out there that even as an evaluator in the building, a scout, a GM, or a head coach, that you can, you know, you can sometimes hear too much, and you really still have to get back to, like, what are the things you're looking for. So, and that can vary by team, and that's good, you know, that there's nothing wrong with that, but that was kind of the process.
Sean, when you told Bo this morning on the field, what was his reaction?
He smiled, and he was good, and we're getting ready to practice, and that was it. You know, we didn't have cake and candles or anything like that. We just.
when did you tell the rest of the team that after?
I haven't told the rest of the team yet, because I'm not going to spend meetings with the rest of the team on every one of these other positions. I mean, they've kind of seen this coming to some degree, and again, one of my goals in the offseason was to improve relationships with the local media, and I wanted you guys to hear it first. Now, the 50 military heard it before you. Anyway, but I honestly, I appreciate that process, because it's difficult. We're all pressed for information, and we truly, we wanted to let the thing play itself out. And most of the time when that happens, you arrive at the right decisions. And I think anything earlier than that or prematurely than that, you run the risk of like, hey, wait a minute, So certainly you're pleased to see where he's at, but there's a lot of room here for growth with this player, and the same with Jared and Zach. We're talking about just one position group right now, but I said a week and a half ago, I like this room right now and where it's at. And Zach probably had one of his better practices today. I don't know what his red zone numbers were, but he was outstanding. So, and then when we play this weekend, how do I get Zach some work with maybe a group ahead? Oftentimes playing that position, you're counting on the other 10, and there's no indictment on the other 10 last weekend. But if there's pressure from one position, then it's harder to do your job at quarterback. So we haven't gone through the Sunday's roles yet. We're going to meet today at 2, and there'll be some guys that we hold out. I've got a sheet really of every one of these players with every total snap they've played, Indianapolis and then Green Bay. And so there's some guys, veteran starters maybe, that don't have the snaps, and so they may see some time on Sunday. And then there's some guys that have had a lot of snaps where I'll just be real mindful of. So we'll have a better feel for that as the week goes on.
Sean, now that you've gotten to this decision, do you allow yourself personally to get, excited, a little extra juice of, hey, we've got the rookie quarterback we selected, he's won the job, of what he can maybe turn into?
Well, I think one of the things that takes place over the years, and it always is focused on the first round pick, right? And I've told these stories a number of times. When you do this long enough, you have some guys that come in right away, and you're like, wow. We drafted Jeremy Shockey in New York, and his first day of practice was like, and those are great days, right? When you hear the story of the first practice the Bulls had with Michael Jordan when they selected him third, the coaches came in the locker room almost giddy, and so. And then conversely, I've been a part of teams where it's like the first day maybe wasn't what you had hoped for, and then you begin coaching. And so to your question, look, I'm excited to coach this team. I think you guys have seen just there's an energy about it. That doesn't guarantee anything from a win-loss perspective, but we're young. We have a lot of competition at a lot of positions. And so far, everything that we've asked of them, we talk about what today's practice is. It's easy at the end, this last week and a half of training camp, to back off. But if we're going to be out here for 2 hours and 15 minutes, let's get to work. And so the leadership's evolving from different position groups because we've had a lot of leaders that were here in the past that are gone. So the energy and the excitement, I think, comes from what you're seeing from your team. More than any one position.
One of the first times we talked about, he said, I want to be more than the first round pick. And when we asked him about being a starting quarterback, he hasn't seemed particularly concerned. Do you like that attitude that he's got?
I think overall, look, there is a maturity level to him that maybe is different than a lot of rookies. And you guys see that when you interact. I mean, this is kind of part of this COVID segment of football where, Palcho, I don't know how many games he's played, but probably the most snaps of anyone in NC2A history. And then Bo's had 60. That's unusual because of what happened during COVID. And so you do feel a maturity level. Just handling the media, whatever it is that he's had experience with. So you do feel that with this player.
Coach, is this a decision for the entire year? Is it a week by week?
Yeah, I knew that question was coming, and this goes for the team. There's no tour exemptions for 17 weeks, like Castle Pines right now. These guys, they're earning each week and playing well each week, and it's not just the quarterback position, but you don't get a season exemption. You got to play.
As you've gone through this process, how much studying have you done of kind of the history of rookie quarterbacks who play right away, or whether they don't start the first?
Yeah, look, we've done a lot of that pre-draft, and there's look, there's a number of examples where guys have been taken and maybe served as a backup before they went on to be successful. There's other examples where guys, played right away. It can vary depending on the team, and it certainly varies depending on the player. Oftentimes, historically speaking, those teams at the real front end of the draft are the teams that have been struggling. And so sometimes the fit is tough when one of these players ends up at a team that maybe hasn't had success. And then, we've seen a guy like Roethlisberger maybe pick just a little later, but to a team that's had success, or a guy like Aaron Rodgers go back a little bit, but then, and even with Patrick in our division, he goes to a place where there's a starter. So each example is different, and so I don't think you can pigeonhole yourself. Certainly, we knew at the end of the season we had to address the position, either in free agency, trade, or in the draft, and we were able to do really two of those moves. But I think they're all a little different depending on the team, and then certainly more importantly depending on the player that comes in.
You mentioned Bo's
what's that?
maturity. How does that manifest in terms of being a leader in the huddle to guys?
I think,
4, 5, 6?
look, I think good. I think there's areas that he's working on that way. I think, look, he started 61 games, but that in itself doesn't guarantee NFL success. I mean, we've had guys win the Heisman twice that never made it in the NFL, and so, but it certainly helps relative to what he's seeing. Each one has a different personality, and I think the best advice always is, to be yourself and not try to be someone different. And so that room has got good chemistry. Those personalities are all a little different, and I think, the mistake would be no different than coaching, of trying to maybe be someone you're not. And he's had experience, he's had adversity. He's failed, presumably, transferred, and yet bounce back. All of those things, sometimes you don't have a chance to get exposure with like a third-year junior, for instance. But in this case, I think it proved to be, for him, valuable.
You talked about wanting to be able to work with and develop Zach and his talent.
Yes.
In the last couple of weeks, what specifically have you seen him sort of unlock as he's gone?
So, I mean, we've all, like, you see the arm talent, but the decision making, like today, and the timing of there's 3 throws today that, he was on a little bit of a heater. I mean, it was impressive. But I would say the overall understanding of the offense, the schemes of what we're doing, decision making, and then also, hey, one play, get on to the next. It's not going to be perfect. An incompletion is a good play. It's not a bad play, but we're avoiding sacks, fumbles, the turnover, negative play differential. We talk about avoiding those things, keeping drives going, and by and large, when you do that, you give yourself a chance to kick field goals or score touchdowns. It's harder to do that, overcoming some of those other things.
Sean,
Go ahead.
Bo has shown a deftness at navigating a dirty pocket, and I'm wondering if
It's one of the things. It's a great point. If you said, all right, what were the 2 or 3 things that stood out on tape? When we watched all of his Oregon film, at times there's going to be a little penetration, and all of these guys in their pro days are showing us, off-schedule throws, some throws we would never even expect to do in a game. But you saw in every game he played a dirty pocket, a quick plant step, ball out accurately, and for some guys that's hard to do. They need the full stride and a clean pocket, and so he was very, in each game, whether it was climb up, escape right, climb, escape left, or just move a little and release it. And so that served him well relative to the sack numbers. He became a tough sack because the ball is out. Now, you have to be able to process very quickly too, and so you saw that on film. If there was one thing we're still working on now, is he's really quick through the process, and sometimes maybe a little quick past 1 in the read because his internal clock is going. There's been some times we snap the ball maybe and we've got a shift and it might to you look like a motion and we're making a note like, hey, let this guy get set, that kind of thing. But his clock is very quick, and even the throw the other night where he's just past the line of scrimmage, that's a pretty heads up play, and so yeah, I mean I that was something that stood out. His off schedule, but in the pocket when there was some penetration. There's a play that I've never seen before where the guard was blocking a 3 technique and he kind of climbed and he actually slipped under between the guard and the 3 technique, came out the other side and threw it to the top. I just never seen that ever happen. It was the first time I ever saw it in my life, where the quarterback kind of ducked between the rusher and the blocker and kind of came out the other end. And but all of this is great, and yet you still have to find your target and move the ball. And I described, a little bit of when you watched him play, you didn't feel like you were in harm's way a lot. You felt like this guy was in the fairway quite a bit. And remember, one of the commandments at this position, it's not how many touchdown passes. It's can you lead your team into the end zone? Can you lead your team? Can you lead your team to score points? And there's a lot that goes with that, and that's really how all of these guys, when their careers are done, will be measured. Yeah, go ahead.
You talked about starting to tailor once you've made a decision. Now, does that start in earnest in terms of Seattle in particular?
Well, even the other night, I told you we've got a couple call sheets. I knew kind of the things that Bo had dotted. The same way with Jared and Zach, and then as we get into game planning, and yeah, you want to get really good at the things that you think he does well. That's coaching, that's just. And so the runner that's in the game, what are we doing? Does it suit what he does? The receivers, there's you have to begin to put your offense together, built around the skill set of your players, no different than defensively the same way. So that's part of it, yes.
Are you relieved or satisfied that this conclusion came now and didn't drag into the regular season for quarterback?
Well, I don't think I would have allowed it to drag into the regular season. I just didn't want to hurry it. And everyone, listen, teams handle these things differently. There's certain things I believe in, and we kind of set out a plan. And so, look, I'm pleased with how he's playing, and it's much easier, to make a decision like that, much more difficult maybe if he wasn't having this, you guys understand where we got a chance to see it. And, but that's most important for the locker room, I think. One more.
Situationally, you guys have been, a lot better. You talk about scoring points, you have to succeed in those areas. What are some of the common traits that you've seen team-wide that have allowed you guys third down?
Look, I mean, there's a lot of things that we've got to get better at and clean up, but if you're talking about defensively, look, we've been playing the run pretty well. Granted, it's just the preseason. We've had a joint practice. Offensively, we've done a good job of avoiding the minus plays. We had a couple the other night late in the game, but staying on schedule gives you a much better chance of scoring. And then from the kicking game standpoint, we're all finding our way through the obviously the kickoff and the kick return, and so we're still a good, call it a week and a half almost left of what is training camp before we get into Seattle, and we keep working at it. So that's kind of where we're at. Appreciate you guys.